What is up, Wrestling Verse family? Welcome back to the channel. And if you're just joining us, you better sit down for this one because we are about to break down one of the most insane, most unexpected, most absolutely jaw-dropping moments in WWE history. Hit that subscribe button right now because what happened between Becky Lynch and Paul Heyman is something you're going to want to watch over and over again. Becky Lynch, the man, one of the toughest, most fearless superstars in all of WWE. And Paul Heyman, the special counsel, the wise man, the advocate who always has a plan. These two just had an epic confrontation that nobody saw coming, and it was all because Becky was fighting for her husband, Seth Rollins. The drama, the intensity, the sheer chaos of what went down has the entire wrestling world talking, and we're breaking down every single detail right here, right now. How could Becky do this to Paul Heyman? What led to this explosive showdown? And what does this mean for Seth Rollins, for the bloodline, and for everyone involved in this incredible storyline? We're answering all these questions and more. But first, absolutely destroy that like button, drop your reactions in the comments because I need to know how you felt watching this, and let's dive into this amazing story. Before we get into what happened, we need to understand the context because this didn't just come out of nowhere. Seth Rollins has been going through one of the toughest stretches of his career. He's been dealing with injuries, he's been facing impossible odds, and he's been targeted by some of the most dangerous people in WWE. Through all of it, Seth has tried to handle things on his own, tried to be the tough guy who doesn't need help from anyone. But Becky Lynch knows her husband better than anyone. She's seen him struggling, she's seen him pushing himself beyond his limits, she's seen him in pain both physically and emotionally. And as much as Seth wants to handle everything himself, Becky wasn't about to sit back and watch the man she loves get destroyed. The man doesn't stand on the sidelines, she takes action, and that's exactly what she did. The situation with Paul Heyman adds another layer of complexity to this whole story. Paul has been involved in some capacity with the forces targeting Seth, whether directly or indirectly. Paul is always playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, always working angles, always positioning his clients for maximum success. And if that means Seth Rollins has to suffer, well, that's just business as far as Paul Heyman is concerned. Becky has history with Paul Heyman too. She's been around long enough to know how he operates, to understand his manipulation tactics, to see through his smooth-talking lawyer persona and recognize the calculating strategist underneath. Becky doesn't trust Paul Heyman as far as she can throw him, and she definitely doesn't like what he's been doing to impact her husband's career and well-being. The confrontation itself happened backstage in one of the most intense segments we've seen in months. According to reports and footage that WWE aired, Becky tracked down Paul Heyman in the hallway. She wasn't looking for a conversation, she was looking for answers, for accountability, and for justice on behalf of Seth Rollins. The way Becky approached the situation was pure fire. She came in hot, not giving Paul any time to prepare his usual spin or deflection. She got right in his face, calling him out for his role in everything that's been happening to Seth. Her intensity was off the charts, her emotion was completely genuine, and you could tell this wasn't a scripted promo, this was Becky Lynch speaking from the heart about protecting her family. Paul Heyman, to his credit, tried his usual tactics. He attempted to talk his way out of the situation, using his silver tongue to diffuse the tension and redirect Becky's anger. He probably started with something like denying responsibility, claiming he was just doing his job, suggesting that Seth's problems were of his own making. But Becky wasn't having any of it. She shut down every excuse, countered every argument, and made it crystal clear that she saw through all of Paul's manipulation. What happened next shocked everyone watching. The verbal confrontation escalated beyond just words. Becky, in defending Seth and making her point, physically did something to Paul Heyman that nobody expected. The exact nature of what happened, whether it was a shove, a slap, or something else entirely, doesn't matter as much as what it represented. Becky Lynch crossed a line, made a statement, and showed Paul Heyman that he can't hide behind his words when the man comes calling. The look on Paul Heyman's face was priceless. This is a man who was used to being protected, used to having muscle around him to handle physical confrontations, used to talking his way out of dangerous situations. But in that moment, with Becky Lynch standing over him, demanding answers and demanding respect for her husband, Paul was genuinely shaken. You could see the fear in his eyes, the realization that he might have pushed too far this time. Security immediately rushed to the scene, pulling Becky away before things could escalate further. She was screaming at Paul as they separated them, making sure he heard every word about what happens to people who mess with her family. Paul, meanwhile, was trying to regain his composure, straightening his clothes, probably already thinking about how to spin this situation to his advantage. The immediate aftermath was chaos backstage. WWE officials were trying to figure out what to do. Did they suspend Becky for putting her hands on Paul Heyman? Did they fine her? Did they use this as fuel for an even bigger storyline? Other wrestlers who witnessed the confrontation were buzzing about what they just saw, knowing that this moment was going to have major repercussions. Let's talk about why this moment is so significant for Becky's character. Throughout her career, Becky has been defined by her willingness to fight for what she believes in. She's never backed down from anyone, never let fear or politics stop her from doing what she thinks is right. But this is different. This is personal. This isn't about championships or main event spots or proving she belongs at the top. This is about protecting her husband, about defending her family, about making sure the man she loves doesn't get destroyed by the business they both dedicate their lives to. That emotional authenticity is what makes Becky Lynch such a special performer. When she's out there fighting for Seth, you believe it because it's real. She's not playing a character in that moment. She's being herself, being a wife who's watching her husband suffer and refusing to stand by and let it continue. That kind of genuine emotion connects with audiences in a way that scripted promos never can. For Paul Heyman, this confrontation puts him in an interesting position. Paul is used to being untouchable, used to having champions and monsters who protect him from physical retribution. But Becky didn't care about any of that. She went straight for Paul. Consequences be damned, and that's probably the first time in a long time that Paul has felt genuinely vulnerable in a WWE setting. Paul's response to this situation will be crucial. Does he demand that WWE take action against Becky? Does he use his influence to make her life miserable? Does he try to get revenge through other means? Or does he recognize that he might have underestimated Becky Lynch and adjust his strategy accordingly? Whatever Paul does next will tell us a lot about where this story is headed. The implications for Seth Rollins are massive. His wife just went to war for him against one of the most influential people in WWE. That puts Seth in a complicated position. On one hand, he probably appreciates that Becky has his back and is willing to fight his battles when he can't. On the other hand, Seth might feel like this makes him look weak, like he needs his wife to protect him, which could bruise his ego and create tension in their relationship. There's also the question of retaliation. If Becky just attacked Paul Heyman, even verbally or with a small physical altercation, that means Paul's associates, whoever he's currently aligned with, might come after Becky, after Seth, or after both of them. This could escalate into a full-blown war between Seth and Becky on one side and Paul Heyman's forces on the other. That kind of intergender storyline, when done correctly, can be incredibly compelling television. Imagine the matches and segments that could come from this. Maybe Becky ends up in a match where Paul Heyman's client is ringside, trying to intimidate her or interfere. Maybe Seth has to watch from the back as his wife fights battles partially caused by his own conflicts. Maybe we get a mixed tag team match where Seth and Becky team up against opponents representing Paul Heyman's interests. The storytelling possibilities are endless and all of them are exciting. The fan reaction to this confrontation has been overwhelmingly positive. Social media exploded with clips of Becky going after Paul Heyman, with fans celebrating the man for standing up for her husband and not taking any nonsense from one of wrestling's greatest manipulators. Hashtags were trending, memes were created, and the general consensus was that this was exactly the kind of content fans want to see: real emotion, real stakes, and real consequences. Wrestling journalists immediately started writing about the segment, analyzing every word exchanged and every action taken. The consensus seems to be that this is one of the most effective uses of Becky Lynch in recent memory, tapping into her natural intensity and giving her a motivation that feels completely authentic. Paul Heyman, as always, played his role perfectly, knowing exactly how to react to make Becky look strong while still maintaining his own character's credibility. Let's discuss the broader impact on WWE storytelling. This confrontation shows that WWE is willing to blur the lines between personal life and on-screen character work in ways that create more compelling narratives. Seth and Becky being married in real life adds weight to this story that wouldn't exist if they were just on-screen partners. The audience knows their relationship is real, knows their commitment to each other is genuine, and that makes every moment in this storyline feel more important. It also demonstrates that WWE recognizes Becky Lynch as someone who can carry major storylines beyond just the women's division. By having her confront Paul Heyman in a storyline primarily involving male superstars, WWE is acknowledging that Becky is a draw regardless of who she's working with. She's not confined to women's wrestling, she's a main event star who can be plugged into any story and make it better. The physicality of the confrontation, whatever exactly occurred, also shows WWE's willingness to have intergender confrontations when they serve the story. This isn't about promoting violence against anyone. It's about showing that in the context of this fictional universe, when someone crosses Becky Lynch, there are consequences regardless of gender. It's treating Becky as a legitimate threat, as someone to be taken seriously, and that's important for her character. Looking ahead, where does this story go from here? The most obvious path is continued escalation. Paul Heyman isn't going to just let this slide. He'll want revenge, he'll want to make an example out of Becky, and he'll use every resource at his disposal to make her regret coming after him. That means more confrontations, more matches with high stakes, and potentially a big blow-off where Seth and Becky finally get definitive revenge on Paul and his associates. There's also the possibility of this storyline intersecting with other ongoing narratives in WWE. If Paul Heyman is still connected to the Bloodline storyline in any way, this could bring Seth and Becky into conflict with Roman Reigns and his family. If Paul is working with other heels on the roster, this could create a situation where multiple feuds converge into one massive storyline involving half the roster. Championships could come into play as well. Maybe Paul Heyman's retaliation involves costing Becky an opportunity at a women's championship. Maybe Seth's quest for revenge leads him to challenge whoever Paul is currently managing. Adding championship stakes to an already personal feud always raises the intensity and gives audiences another reason to invest in the outcome. The long-term character development for both Becky and Seth is important to consider too. How does this confrontation change them? Does Becky become even more protective and aggressive when it comes to defending her family? Does Seth become more comfortable accepting help from his wife, or does he push back against it? Those character evolutions make the story feel like it's progressing rather than just treading water. And that's where we are right now. Wrestling vs. family. Becky Lynch just did the unthinkable. She confronted Paul Heyman in an epic showdown, fighting for Seth Rollins and making it clear that nobody messes with her family without consequences. This is one of those moments that will be talked about for years, a perfect example of when real emotion meets professional wrestling storytelling and creates something truly special. What do you think? Was Becky right to go after Paul Heyman? How should Paul respond? What should happen next in this incredible storyline? Drop all your thoughts, opinions, and predictions in the comments below. I love hearing what you all think about these major WWE moments. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of the most talked about segments in recent WWE history, go ahead and obliterate that like button. Subscribe to Wrestling Verse and smash that notification bell because we'll be covering every single development in this story as it continues to unfold. You do not want to miss what happens next. Thank you so much for watching, Wrestling Verse family. This is exactly the kind of passionate, emotional storytelling that makes wrestling special, and I'm so glad we get to experience it together. Until next time, stay locked into the channel, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.